Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, looking down at the small blue planet below. Earth looked so quiet and peaceful from space. The white clouds moved slowly across the green and blue surface. It was hard to believe that billions of primitive creatures lived down there. Such a beautiful world, he said to his second-in-command. It will make a perfect example for the other species in this sector. The Krell Empire had been watching Earth for months. Their scouts reported that humans were weak and divided. They had basic space travel, but nothing compared to Krell technology. Their governments fought with each other constantly, perfect targets. "Sir, should we begin the demonstration?" asked his tactical officer. Vextar smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Yes, 3 cities should be enough to make them surrender. Target their capitals, Seoul, New York, and London. Make it quick and clean." Down on Earth, in Seoul's underground defense command center, Captain Na-yeon was finishing her morning coffee when the alarms started screaming. Red lights flashed everywhere. The giant screens on the walls showed something that made her blood run cold. Massive alien ships had appeared in Earth's atmosphere without any warning. They were huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built, and they were moving toward the major cities. "Captain!" shouted Lieutenant Tae-min from his communication station. "We're getting reports from around the globe. Alien vessels are targeting Seoul, New York, and London simultaneously." Na-yeon dropped her coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, but she didn't notice. "Sound the evacuation alarms. Get me General Ho Sung on the line right now." Before anyone could respond, the building shook violently. Dust fell from the ceiling. On the main screen they watched in horror as bright beams of energy shot down from the alien ships. Entire city blocks disappeared in flashes of light. The communication system crackled to life. A cold alien voice spoke in perfect Korean. "Humans of Earth, I am Commander Thekvar of the Krell Empire. We have just demonstrated our power by destroying portions of 3 of your cities. You have seen what happens to those who resist us." Lieutenant Ji-woo, a young officer barely out of training, stared at the screen showing the destruction in downtown Seoul. Thousands of people had been in those buildings just minutes ago. "Sir, the casualty reports are coming in. It's terrible." Na-yeon felt sick but forced herself to stay focused. This was what they had trained for, even though she had hoped this day would never come. General Ho Sung's face appeared on the communication screen. Even in this crisis, he looked calm and in control. "Captain Na, what's our status?" "Sir, they've hit all 3 target cities. Massive damage. The aliens are demanding our complete surrender." The alien voice continued. "You have exactly 72 hours to surrender your entire planet to Krell rule. If you refuse, we will destroy every major city on Earth. Your primitive weapons cannot harm our ships. Your divided governments cannot organize effective resistance. Submit now, and some of you may survive as our servants." Back on the Krell command ship, Admiral Vextar watched the destruction with satisfaction. The human cities burned exactly as expected. Their primitive emergency services rushed around like ants whose nest had been disturbed. "Admiral," reported his intelligence officer, "we're monitoring their communications. They appear to be in complete panic. Their military leaders are arguing among themselves. Some want to fight, others want to surrender immediately." "Perfect," Vextar said. "This is exactly what our research predicted. Humans are emotional and irrational. They will tear themselves apart before we even need to fire another shot." Down in the command center, General Ho Sung was speaking quietly with his senior staff. "Send this message to the aliens. We need time to consider your terms. Our governments must discuss this decision." Lieutenant Tae-min looked confused. "Sir, are we really considering surrender?" Ho Sung's eyes met his. There was something in the general's expression that Tae-min couldn't quite understand. "Send the message exactly as I said, Lieutenant." The message went out to the Krell ships. On his bridge, Admiral Vextar laughed out loud when he heard it. "Listen to them beg for time. They know they cannot win, so they hope to delay the inevitable." His officers joined in the laughter. "Should we give them the full 72 hours, sir?" asked one. "Of course," Vextar replied. "Let them suffer in fear. Let them argue and panic. It will make their final surrender even sweeter. Besides, our invasion fleets need time to get into position. When they finally give up, we want to be ready to occupy every major city on the planet." Captain Na Yon watched the alien ships hovering over Seoul like dark clouds. Around her, the command center buzzed with activity. Officers ran back and forth carrying reports and orders. Everyone looked scared and desperate. But something felt different about General Ho Sung's orders. They seemed too calm, too organized for a military facing impossible odds. Lieutenant Ji Woo approached her station. "Captain, I've been monitoring global communications. Something strange is happening. Military units worldwide are moving, but not randomly. It's like they're following some kind of coordinated plan." Na Yon nodded slowly. Maybe there was more to this situation than appeared on the surface. Maybe their seemingly impossible situation wasn't quite as hopeless as the aliens believed. The Krell had made their move. Now they would wait and watch as humanity supposedly tore itself apart, in panic and fear. They had no idea what was really about to begin. President Lee Bo sat in the deepest level of the emergency bunker, 300 feet below the Blue House. The reinforced concrete walls were lined with screens, showing reports from around the world. Every news channel displayed the same horrifying images: burning cities, panicked crowds, and those massive alien ships hanging in the sky like dark omens. "Madam President," said her chief advisor, checking his tablet nervously, "the public is demanding answers. Social media is going crazy. People are scared and angry." Lee Bo nodded slowly. She looked tired, her usually perfect hair slightly messy from the stress. To anyone watching, she appeared to be a leader, overwhelmed by an impossible situation. "How long until the alien deadline?" 68 hours and 37 minutes, replied Defense Minister Woo Kyu. His voice was steady, but there was something careful about the way he spoke, as if he was choosing each word precisely. "And our military status?" Lee Bo asked, rubbing her temples like she had a terrible headache. Woo Kyu glanced around the room before answering. "Ma'am, all forces are repositioning as planned. The evacuation of major cities is proceeding smoothly. Anyone listening would think he meant the military was retreating, running away from the alien threat." But Lee Bo caught the slight emphasis on certain words. She had known Woo Kyu for 15 years. They had a way of communicating that went beyond simple words. "I see," she said quietly. "And the international response?" "The Americans are moving their Atlantic fleet toward their eastern coast. The Europeans are consolidating their forces around major population centers. Russia is pulling back from their border regions. Everyone appears to be taking defensive positions." On the surface, it sounded like every major military force on Earth was retreating, preparing for siege warfare. The perfect response from a terrified inferior species facing impossible odds. Far below the Pacific Ocean, in a facility that didn't exist on any official maps, Captain Yu Jin watched dozens of screens showing ship movements across the globe. The underwater base was massive, carved into an extinct underwater volcano over the past 20 years. Above his head, 3 miles of ocean water hid the base from any scanning technology the aliens might use. "Captain, the Atlantic groups are in position," reported Lieutenant Han Sol from her station. "Pacific squadrons have reached their coordinates. All units are maintaining communication silence." Eugene nodded, watching as tiny dots on his tactical display moved into carefully planned positions. To any outside observer monitoring Earth's communications, it would look like scattered military units fleeing in panic. Ships heading away from the alien threat, hiding in remote areas, abandoning major population centers. The reality was very different. "What about the orbital platforms?" Eugene asked. Commander So Hai looked up from her control panel. "Phase 2 is ready, sir. All defense platforms are powered down, maintaining the illusion. From space, they look like dead satellites and space debris." Eugene smiled grimly. Humanity had been preparing for this possibility for decades, ever since the first radio signals had been detected from deep space. While the public worried about climate change and economic problems, a secret international group had been building defenses that most people couldn't even imagine. The powered-down platforms floating in Earth's orbit looked like old, broken satellites, space junk that any advanced civilization would ignore. The underground bases appeared to be natural geological formations. The hidden shipyards looked like abandoned mining operations. "Sir," said Lieutenant Min Ho from Communications, "we're picking up alien transmissions. They're laughing about our primitive response to their attack." Meanwhile, on the Krell command ship, Admiral Vextar was indeed laughing. His intelligence officers brought him report after report of human chaos and confusion. "Admiral, their military forces are scattering in all directions," reported his tactical officer. "Their naval vessels are fleeing to open ocean areas. Their aircraft are being moved away from population centers. It's exactly what we predicted from a primitive species." Vextar studied the holographic display showing Earth's surface. Red dots indicated human military movements. Every single dot showed forces moving away from the alien ships, running for remote locations where they thought they might be safe. "Their governments can't even agree on a response," added his intelligence chief. "We're monitoring arguments between their leaders. Some want to fight, others want to surrender immediately. They're paralyzed by fear and indecision." Back in the Seoul Command Center, Captain Nayeon received new orders every hour. Each message told her to move specific units to different locations. On paper, it looked like random panic movements. Her own staff seemed confused and scared, but Nayeon had been in the military long enough to recognize something else. The seemingly chaotic orders had a pattern. Units weren't just running away randomly, they were moving to very specific coordinates. Supply convoys that appeared to be evacuation efforts were actually carrying unusual cargo to predetermined locations. Lieutenant Tae-min approached her station with another report. "Captain, I'm seeing strange energy signatures from some of our evacuated facilities. It's almost like they're not actually abandoned." Nayeon glanced around to make sure no one else was listening. "Keep monitoring those signatures, Lieutenant. But keep your observations to yourself for now." The young officer nodded, understanding that something much larger was happening beneath the surface of apparent chaos. Around the world, the same careful deception continued. News reports showed panicked civilians fleeing cities, military units in disarray, and political leaders arguing helplessly about humanity's response to the alien ultimatum. The Krell intercepted every communication, monitored every news broadcast, and analyzed every military movement. Everything they saw confirmed their initial assessment. Humans were a weak, divided species that would collapse under pressure. Admiral Vextar felt so confident that he even delayed calling in additional invasion fleets. Why waste resources on such an easy conquest? The countdown continued. 67 hours until humanity's supposed surrender. Neither side knew that the real battle hadn't even begun yet. The digital clock in Seoul's command center showed 07:59:58. 07:59:59. Toshiro. Exactly 72 hours had passed since the alien ultimatum. General Ho Sung had been standing perfectly still for the last 5 minutes, watching that clock. His face showed no emotion, but Captain Na-yeon could see his hands were steady as rocks. Around the command center, every officer held their breath. "Now," Ho Sung whispered. The single word was transmitted on a frequency that didn't officially exist, sent to locations that weren't supposed to be there, received by people who weren't meant to exist. Across the entire planet, everything changed. In an instant. In the mountains of Colorado, what looked like solid rock suddenly split apart. Massive platforms rose from underground silos that had been hidden for decades. These weren't the crude missile launchers that the aliens had seen in their intelligence reports. These were weapons that used technology most humans didn't even know existed. In the Australian outback, beneath what appeared to be an abandoned mining site, similar platforms emerged from deep underground chambers. The desert sand fell away like a curtain being pulled back, revealing gleaming metal structures that hummed with barely contained energy. On the ocean floor near the Mariana Trench, Captain Eugene watched his screens light up with confirmation. "Signals. All stations report ready, sir," said Lieutenant Han Sol, her voice tight with excitement. "Excellent," Eugene replied. "Begin Phase 3. Decloak all vessels." Above them, scattered across the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, what the Krell had assumed were just space rocks began to change. The rough brown surfaces peeled away like snakeskin, revealing sleek ships underneath. Hundreds of them. Captain Jin stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, watching Earth grow larger on his view screen. His ship had been hiding in the asteroid belt for 6 months, waiting for this exact moment. "All ships, this is Alpha 1. Target the invasion fleet." Engage at will. Back on Earth, Admiral Vextar was enjoying his morning meal when his tactical officer burst onto the bridge, his face pale with shock. Sir, you need to see this immediately." "What is it?" Vextar asked, annoyed at being interrupted. "Have the humans finally sent their surrender message?" "No, sir, it's impossible. Our sensors are detecting massive energy signatures all across the planet. Structures are appearing from underground, and, sir, there are ships. Hundreds of ships coming from the asteroid belt." Vextar dropped his eating utensil and rushed to the main display. What he saw made his blood run cold. The peaceful blue planet below was transforming before his eyes. Weapons platforms were rising from locations their scouts had marked as empty wilderness. Energy readings were off the charts. "This is impossible," he muttered. "Our intelligence reports showed primitive technology, basic rockets and simple electronics." "Sir," called his communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." A human face appeared on the screen. It was Captain Jin, and he was smiling. Not the desperate smile of someone hoping for mercy, but the confident smile of a predator about to strike. "Greetings, Admiral Vextar. I'm Captain Jin of the Earth Defense Fleet. You gave us 72 hours to surrender. Instead, we'd like to make you a counteroffer. Leave our system now, and we might let some of you survive." Vextar stared at the screen in disbelief. "You dare threaten us? Your pathetic world has no chance against the Krell Empire." Jin's smile grew wider. "Let's find out." The transmission ended, and immediately the Krell ships found themselves under attack from directions they hadn't thought possible. The weapons platforms on Earth's surface fired beams of energy that cut through Krell shields like they were made of paper. The hidden ships from the asteroid belt attacked in perfect coordination, their movements so precise it seemed like they were reading the Krell commanders' minds. Commander Thekroy led the first wave of invasion ships toward Earth's surface, expecting to meet scattered resistance from primitive aircraft. Instead, he found himself facing fighters that moved like nothing he had ever seen before. "How are they doing this?" he asked his pilot, as a human fighter somehow appeared directly behind them, despite being on their screen just seconds before. "Their ships shouldn't be able to move like that." His question was answered by a missile that struck his ship's engine core. As his vessel spun out of control, Thekroy watched in horror as his entire squadron was eliminated in less than 3 minutes. "What are these creatures?" He gasped into his emergency communicator before his ship exploded. Lieutenant Daeho was piloting one of those impossible human fighters. Inside his cockpit, advanced computers helped him process information faster than any alien could imagine. His fighter responded to his thoughts almost before he had them. He had been training for this moment his entire life. "Target acquired," he reported calmly, locking onto another Krell ship. Fox 3. His missile streaked across space and found its target perfectly. Daeho was already turning toward his next opponent before the explosion finished lighting up his rear camera. Back in the Seoul Command Center, Captain Na Yeon watched the tactical display with amazement. The red dots representing alien ships were disappearing faster than she could count them. The blue dots representing human forces seemed to be everywhere at once. "Captain," said Lieutenant Tae Min, his voice filled with awe, "our forces are reporting minimal resistance. The alien ships, they're not equipped to handle our actual technology." Nayeon realized that everything they had seen over the past 3 days had been an elaborate performance. The panic, the confusion, the desperate evacuation plans, all of it had been carefully designed to make the aliens overconfident. General Ho Sung appeared on her communication screen. For the first time since the crisis began, he was smiling. "Captain Nayeon, prepare for the next phase. It's time to show our visitors what happens when you underestimate humanity." The sleeping giant had awakened, and it was very, very angry. "Admiral." Vextar stared at the tactical display in complete disbelief. The holographic representation of space around Earth showed a sight that defied everything he thought he knew about warfare. Red dots representing his ships were disappearing at an alarming rate, while blue dots representing human vessels seemed to multiply and move in ways that shouldn't be possible. "Status report," he demanded, his voice cracking slightly. His tactical officer's hands shook as he worked his console. Sir, we've lost 53% of our invasion fleet in the past 4 hours. The humans, they're not fighting like any species we've encountered before. What do you mean? Vextar snapped. Sir, they fight like apex predators. Every move they make is calculated to cause maximum damage while exposing themselves to minimum risk. They seem to know what we're going to do before we do it. The main screen, Vextar watched one of his heavy cruisers explode in a brilliant flash. The human ships that had destroyed it were already gone, having vanished back into the asteroid field like ghosts. His officers had called them primitive, but these tactics were anything but primitive. They were sophisticated, brutal, and terrifyingly effective. Down on Earth's surface, the ground battle was going even worse for the Krell forces. Lieutenant Yunbo crouched behind a collapsed building in what used to be downtown Seoul, watching the alien landing zone through her tactical visor. Her squad of 12 soldiers was hidden in positions around the area, invisible to the enemy. Sensors! Team Alpha, this is Ghost Leader, she whispered into her communication device. Enemy patrol moving toward Building 7. Intercept and eliminate. Make it quiet. 3 of her soldiers moved like shadows through the rubble. The Krell patrol never saw them coming. One moment they were scanning for human resistance, the next moment they were dead. No shots fired, no alarms raised. Yunbo smiled grimly. The aliens had made a fatal mistake when they decided to fight humans on the ground. They had evolved on a world where intelligence was the primary survival trait. Humans had evolved on a world where everything wanted to kill them, and they had learned to kill back. Ghost Leader, this is Base Command, came a voice through her earpiece. Satellite imagery shows a major alien column moving toward your position. Estimated arrival in 15 minutes. Copy that, Base Command. We'll be ready. Yunbo and her team had been preparing for this kind of combat their entire lives. Not just military training, but evolutionary preparation that went back millions of years. Her ancestors had hunted creatures much larger and more dangerous than these aliens, using nothing but stone tools and teamwork. The Krell column approached the area exactly when the satellites had predicted. 50 alien soldiers in advanced armor, carrying weapons that could level buildings. They moved in perfect formation, their sensors scanning constantly for threats. They never found the humans until it was too late. Yunbo's team struck from 7 different directions simultaneously. They used the terrain, the shadows, and their enemies' own expectations against them. The aliens expected a direct confrontation, a fair fight between opposing forces. Instead, they got a hunting lesson from Earth's apex predators. The battle lasted exactly 3 minutes and 27 seconds. When it was over, all 50 aliens were dead, and Yunbo's team had disappeared back into the ruins without losing a single person. One Krell soldier, badly wounded but still alive, managed to activate his emergency beacon before dying. His final transmission was heard by Krell forces across the globe. These humans, they're not like the intelligence reports said. They're built for war. They're born killers. In space, Commander Na Yon watched from the bridge of her stealth frigate as the alien fleet tried desperately to regroup. The Krell ships were technically superior in many ways, larger, more heavily armed with better shields, but their crews had no idea how to fight an enemy that refused to play by their rules. Captain, reported her navigation officer, the enemy, flagship, is trying to establish a defensive perimeter around their damaged vessels. Na Yon studied the tactical display. The aliens were thinking like a military force trying to protect their assets. That was their mistake. Humans didn't fight to protect assets, they fought to eliminate threats. Signal the wolf packs, she ordered. Begin hunting Pattern Omega. Show them what pack hunters do to isolated prey. Human ships that had been scattered across the solar system suddenly converged on the alien formation from multiple directions. They didn't attack in waves or formations. They attacked like wolves bringing down a mammoth, darting in to cause damage, then retreating before the enemy could respond effectively. Admiral Vextar watched his carefully trained fleet fall apart under assault from creatures he was beginning to realize he didn't understand at all. The humans fought with a coordination that seemed impossible, yet also with an individual creativity that kept surprising his tactical computers. "Sir," his science officer called out, I've been analyzing human combat patterns. I think I understand. What we're facing. Explain, Vextar demanded. The humans haven't just been preparing for this invasion for a few years, sir. They've been preparing for thousands of years. Every war they've fought against each other, every conflict, every battle. They've been practicing. They've spent their entire history learning how to kill each other more effectively. The science officer's voice grew quiet, with a realization that chilled everyone on the bridge. Sir, we didn't attack a peaceful species. We attacked a planet full of predators who have spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare. And now, for the first time in their history, they have a common enemy. Vextar finally understood the true horror of their situation. They hadn't awakened a sleeping civilization. They had unified a planet of warriors. Part 5. The Price of Awakening Earth. The silence in space above the Krell homeworld was deafening. For 3 months, the galaxy had watched in stunned disbelief as humanity transformed from what everyone thought was easy prey into something far more terrifying than anyone had imagined. Now, as human warships filled the skies above Krell Prime, the full weight of that transformation was about to be felt. Admiral Vextar pressed his face against the reinforced viewing port of his prison cell, his multiple eyes taking in a sight that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Hundreds of human vessels hung in perfect formation above his homeworld, their sleek design somehow managing to look both beautiful and deadly at the same time. The Krell Admiral's hands shook as he counted the ships. Each one represented technology that his species had dismissed as primitive, commanded by beings they had considered barely worth noticing. Now those same beings held the fate of his entire civilization in their hands. The door to his cell slid open with a soft hiss, and Captain Jin entered with measured steps. The human officer looked tired but resolute, carrying the weight of command with a dignity that Vextar was only now beginning to understand. Your planetary defense grid has been completely disabled, Jin reported matter-of-factly. Your orbital stations have surrendered. Your fleet has been scattered across 6 star systems, with most ships either destroyed or captured. She paused, letting the information sink in. It's over, Admiral. Vextar turned away from the window, his proud military bearing finally cracking. Under the pressure of absolute defeat. We made a terrible mistake, he whispered, the words barely audible even in the small cell. Captain Jin nodded slowly. Yes, you did. You attacked our home, you killed our people. You thought we were weak because we preferred peace to conquest. Her voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath the surface. You learned too late that choosing peace doesn't mean being unable to wage war. The communication system in the cell suddenly activated, and President Li Bo's image appeared in a shimmering holographic display. The leader of humanity looked directly at the defeated Krell Admiral, her expression carrying the weight of billions of human lives that had been threatened by his empire's aggression. Admiral Vextar, she began, her voice carrying across the impossible distance between Earth and the Krell homeworld. Your species made a calculation 3 months ago. You decided that humanity was too weak, too primitive, too divided to pose any real threat to your expansion plans. Vextar found himself unable to look away from the human leader's steady gaze. There was no cruelty in her eyes, no satisfaction at his defeat, only a cold determination that was somehow more frightening than any display of rage would have been. You thought our reluctance to engage in galactic politics was a sign of weakness, President Li continued. You mistook our desire for peaceful coexistence as an inability to defend ourselves. That miscalculation has cost your empire everything. General. Ho Sung stepped into view beside the president, his military uniform bearing decorations that Vextar now realized represented victories against forces far more formidable than the Krell had ever imagined. The galaxy will remember this lesson for generations to come, the general said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had orchestrated the systematic destruction of an interstellar empire. Never strike first at humanity unless you're prepared to finish the job completely, and no species in this galaxy has ever been strong enough to finish that job. The Admiral felt his legs give out beneath him, and he sank onto the simple bench that served as his cell's only furniture. The full scope of what his people had unleashed was finally becoming clear to him. They hadn't just attacked a single world. They had awakened something that had been content to sleep peacefully in its corner of the galaxy. Commander Yu Jin's voice suddenly echoed through every communication channel on the Krell homeworld. Her words reached not just the planetary government, but every civilian, every soldier, every being who called Krell Prime their home. "Citizens of the Krell Empire," she began, her tone carrying the absolute authority of a conqueror who had already won. 3 months ago, your leaders made the decision to test Earth's patience. They believed that humanity could be bullied, conquered, or simply swept aside in your empire's expansion across the galaxy. From his cell, Vextar could see the human fleet repositioning itself above major population centers, a clear demonstration of power that needed no verbal threats to be understood. "This is the price of that decision," Commander Yu continued. "Your fleets are broken. Your colonies have fallen. Your homeworld lies defenseless beneath our guns. You have exactly 1 hour to make a choice that will determine whether your species has a future." The communication paused, letting the weight of the ultimatum settle across the entire planet below. "Your government will formally surrender. You will pay reparations for the damage done to human colonies. You will submit to oversight to ensure this aggression never happens again. Accept these terms, and you may survive as a species, diminished, but alive. Refuse, and you will join the dozens of other civilizations who thought humans were easy prey." The hour that followed was the longest in Krell history. In government buildings across the planet, emergency sessions were called. Military leaders who had spent their careers planning conquests now found themselves discussing the terms of their own surrender. Civilians huddled around communication devices, listening to debates that would determine the fate of their entire species. In the end, there was no real choice to make. The Krell High Council, what remained of it, formally surrendered within 53 minutes of Commander Yu's ultimatum. The once mighty empire that had spanned dozens of star systems and controlled the fates of countless worlds now signed its own subjugation with shaking hands. Across the galaxy, other alien civilizations watched the proceedings with a mixture of horror and fascination. The species they had dismissed as primitive had just dismantled one of the galaxy's major powers with methodical precision. The humans hadn't just won a war, they had sent a message that would echo through space for generations to come. The Thek Dominion quietly cancelled their planned expansion into human-adjacent space. The Zephyrian Collective recalled their scout fleets. The proud warriors of the Corvan Empire suddenly found pressing business in distant sectors far from any human presence. Earth had been sleeping peacefully in its small corner of the galaxy, content to tend its own garden and leave others to their affairs. But when awakened by aggression, it had shown the universe something that would not soon be forgotten. Humanity had claimed its place among the stars, not as victims or as peaceful observers, but as the apex predators they had always been beneath. Their civilized exterior. The galaxy now understood a fundamental truth that would reshape interstellar politics for centuries to come. Earth sleeps lightly, and when awakened, it shows no mercy to those who disturb its rest. The age of humanity had begun, and the universe would never be the same.